to the economy. And a jobs report the White House called disappointing. Here's why. A paltry 22,000 non-farm jobs added, below the 75,000 forecast by leading economists. Unemployment ticked up to 4.3%. More troubling, the three-month average for monthly job creation, 29,000. It was 82,000 during the same period last year. One thing worth noting, however, the president did not label today's downbeat numbers politically manipulated, an evidence-free accusation he hurled when last month's data also disappointed on the downside. For more on the jobs report, state of the U.S. economy, we turn to Ling Kent. Or I look straight ahead to Ling Kent. Ling, what jumps out at you?
You know, there's good, bad, and the ugly when it comes to this jobs report. And when you look at the revisions, looking back over the summer, for example, when President Trump got so riled up about the jobs report, we saw that June number actually go negative 13,000. So that means 13,000 jobs were actually lost. The good news is for July, the numbers were revised up a little. But as for August, when you go beyond the headline number, where were the gains? This jobs report was essentially held up by social services and healthcare jobs. Where we saw the biggest losses were areas that are often impacted by tariffs and by an uncertain economy. We're talking about, government jobs, no surprise there with DOGE involved, manufacturing, mining, and wholesale trade. Those also experience losses. But what you really see, and you probably already feel this in the economy major, is that firms are just holding steady. They're holding on. People are holding on to their jobs. They're hugging them, right? And they're not moving right now because there's so much uncertainty in the economy. So you can imagine all those small business owners that we constantly bring you on this show. They say they can't afford to move very much when it comes to hiring or even hanging on to people that they already have because they don't know where tariffs are going to go. They don't know what it's going to be like if they can meet their bottom line towards the end of the year. So that 6 to 9 month prediction for how tariffs, for example, might impact the economy. We're starting to see that play out right now with this weak jobs report.
Ling, some of the hot takes I saw right after this report surfaced from financial analysts was this guarantees, from their perspective, a September rate cut by the Fed and possibly encourages the Fed to think more seriously about an October rate cut.
Yes, so you basically got a big old green light when it comes to whether or not the Federal Reserve should cut interest rates in September. And now, instead of maybe just a quarter-point cut, you might also expect to see what we call a jumbo cut, maybe half a point when it comes to that benchmark rate. But overall, yes, you could see the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell always saying he's looking at the data. And so when you look at the labor market and you look at inflation, especially PCE that came in earlier this month and also the consumer prices, which we're going to get next week, you could see multiple rate cuts going into the end of this year, which would be great for small businesses who want to invest more in their businesses and borrow money at a cheaper rate. Credit cards, obviously, car loans, and of course, mortgages. It would be good news on that front, but a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, including employers, and that's showing up today in the data.
Ling Kent, as always, thank you very much. I want to turn now to Justin Wolfers. He joins me. He's an economics professor at the University of Michigan. He is also brilliant and witty. Justin, I'm always delighted to talk to you. Give me your top line on what the country should take away from the jobs report today.
Time to get Botox. What do I mean by that? There's going to be all sorts of worry lines across my forehead for the rest of the next few months, mate. There's no question that the economy is slowing, and it's slowed quite dramatically. The real question is if that trajectory continues, because if it continues to slow further, we're getting close to recession territory. We're not there yet. Reading these signals is all the more difficult because we have a mass immigration purge and a slowdown in immigration and population growth right now. But it's time to pay a little attention, and if you're paying attention, to be a little worried.
Justin, I'm glad you mentioned the immigration component because one of the things the White House noted on the upside today is they believe jobs created, though not as robust as they would prefer, are going to Native Americans, and that foreign-born workers are sort of being, in their words, wrung out of the new jobs economy. How do you evaluate that?
Yeah, it's not happening. What's happening is actually a fairly simplistic misreading of how these statistics are compiled by those in the White House. Look, here's the problem. When there's a big immigration crackdown and the federal government surveyors knock at your door and you're an immigrant, you might be less likely to answer the door. As a result, we're getting fewer responses from immigrants, and as a result, it ends up looking like immigrant employment is down or natural-born employment is up. So it's a misreading of the data. It's also not something that gives me any particular joy. There's no American who I want to see do better or worse. I want to see all of them thrive.
The White House also pointed to two other underlying statistics. They said capital investment rose by 8%. They believe that suggests future job growth, reindustrialization, onshoring of America, and wage growth, not spectacular, but 1.4% so far this year. Evaluate those two.
Yeah, so this report had no data on capital investment, but if this capital investment is about rebuilding American manufacturing, which apparently is what much of this tariff pain is about, manufacturing employment fell for the 6th month in a row. Whatever it is that we're doing, it's not working. There's a logic to that. The first page of the tariff handbook says if what you want to do is try and get jobs onshore, don't put tariffs on inputs. Immediately, the president put tariffs on steel and aluminium. There's very, very few Americans who work in steel, so it saves very, very few jobs. But there are enormous numbers, hundreds of thousands, who work in jobs that use steel as an input. Their foreign rivals, their competitors, can make cars without having to pay an extra upcharge for the steel. Americans cannot. So these tariffs are actually undermining the competitiveness of American workers and American companies through manufacturing.
I also heard someone say today that the biggest tax in America right now is an uncertainty tax. Uncertainty about tariffs, uncertainty about the duration and toothiness, if you will, of immigration crackdowns, uncertainty in the regulatory space. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with it. There's actually something good that comes from a tariff. The painful part is you give up money. The good part is the government gets money and can build roads. The uncertainty tax is painful, but we get nothing back for it. It doesn't need to be this way. So think about the whole tariff telenovela that we're all living through. We had Liberation Day on April 2nd. It was all undone on April 9. We were told 90 deals in 90 days. 90 days are up. There were no deals, so they gave themselves a 24-day extension. At the end of that extension, they announced a set of tariffs that looked like what we started with, the Liberation Day tariffs. So they've now been in effect a mere couple of weeks, but the Federal Appeals Court just ruled them unconstitutional. And so now that 10 years after coming down the golden escalator, Trump finally has his tariff policy, we're now just a couple of weeks away from potentially the Supreme Court ruling the whole thing unconstitutional. It's impossible to do business under circumstances like this. There are serious debates about whether tariffs could be good or bad, but incompetence, incoherence, illegality, that doesn't help anyone.
Ling Kent talked to us a moment ago, Justin, about Americans hugging their jobs. I've heard a phrase, no hire, no fire, meaning those who have employees are keeping them, but they are not expanding, and they're not yet, because it's not a true recession, laying people off. Walk my audience through that dynamic.
I think Ling got this exactly right. Look, what do you do when your business is threatened by a set of tariffs that look like they might be enormous, but also might be ruled unconstitutional in a couple of weeks' time? For instance, let me tell you, I'm just going to be, tell you my story. I've wanted to buy a second car, a family car, to get around Michigan. My kids need to get around, and I'm trying to figure out when to do it. I don't want to pay the extra tariff if it's going to be off again the next day. And even though I'm an economist and I study this for a living, I've been frozen in place. I just don't know what to do next. And so think about employers as being in a similar situation, which is, I can't be confident that whatever opportunities are coming up are going to persist. So therefore, I can't expand. And I also can't be confident that whatever threats I'm facing right now are going to persist. So I think it would be a little foolish, perhaps even selfish, to let go of people just based on my fears right now. I see an American economy that's very much frozen in place.
He calls me mate. My trainer calls me mate. I respect them both. Justin Wolfers, always great to have you. Please come back. I appreciate it.